In this video, we're gonna improve upon the app we developed in the last video called interacting with a database in the T3 stack. So not only when clicking a Pokemon will new ones be shown, so we have a continuous cycle of Pokemon being shown to the user, but also we're gonna deploy this whole project. And just to demonstrate that whatever we're developing together is not just limited to the local machine, but those are real world projects that actual users can interact with. So if you're interested in voting for your favorite Pokemon, check the link in either the description or comments, and that will lead you to the project we're gonna develop right now together. Let's get into it. Okay, so as you might remember, this is our Pokemon Beauty Contest project we have coded in the last video. And there are two goals for this project. First off, we want some feedback whenever you click it, like one Pokemon when you've decided which one you find more handsome. And then secondly, the goal for this video is to deploy this project to vercel and assign a custom domain. And I've already checked it, I've already searched for a domain we can use, and that will be pokemonbeautycontest.com. So when this video goes live and you're watching this, you actually have the possibility to also vote on the Pokemon you find most handsome by visiting the site. So this is not just a local project, but an actual, production thing that we can have together. Okay, and the first step would be to actually have some feedback whenever you click a Pokemon and then show the next Pokemon, right? So goal 1 of this video, add feedback and show new Pokemon whenever you click one of them. And then second goal, deploy this project. Let's get started on the first one, which would be having feedback whenever you click a Pokemon and also showing the new ones. So let me make the code a bit larger for you. And this is where we left off at the last video, where we coded this project out together. Now we want to show the next Pokemon whenever you click one of these. So how can we go about that? Well, first off, we have the refetch method, right? And whenever we have less than 2 Pokemon fetched, so for example, like just one, then we're also fetching another one via this TRPC query. And if we do have 2, then we're setting the fetched enough to true, which will disable the query so it won't fetch anymore. Now, I think the first step would be to add a function that lets us reset these whole things. So let's call it handle reset Pokemon. And now let's have const reset Pokemon is equal to that, and let's have a function inside of here. And first off, the Pokemon we're showing, so the 2 right here, Bulbasaur and I don't know how to pronounce that, but this guy, they're shown in this Pokemon list right here. And we have that as a React state. And whenever the query is successful, the TRPC query, then we're setting the state and pushing a Pokemon into this array until we have 2 Pokemon, right? So the first step would be to clear this state. So set Pokemon list to an empty array. And now the question is, when do we call reset Pokemon? And the answer would be, when do we want to reset? Whenever we clicked one of them, right? So we have the handle vote function. Whenever we click, this function gets called and then sends a request to our TRPC mutation router. And inside of this function, we can also have the reset Pokemon, or we could have it as the onSuccess handler of the mutation, which I find a bit more sophisticated. So let's do that. Let's have the function right here. So whenever we successfully voted for a Pokemon, then we will reset Pokemon. So call this function right here, which will reset the Pokemon array. So that means now when we save that, then vote for a Pokemon. For example, let's vote for this one right here. Then the state should have been cleared, but it didn't. So why did it not get cleared? Let's just log out the state. Oh, because we didn't invoke the function. Let's retry that, reload the page and click this one. Nice. Okay, so the state got cleared. And because we cleared the state that contains these 2 Pokemon right here, which is Tauros and this guy, because we cleared that, the use effect got run. So whenever the Pokemon list.length changes, which it did because we set it to an empty array, and then it fetches Pokemon until we have 2 again. So that means whenever we click one, then the vote gets counted and written to the database, but also the Pokemon get reset. So it fetches new ones, which is very nice. Now, what I kind of don't like is that the height of these elements changes when we click one. So for example, when I click, they disappear for a second until we fetch new data from the API. And I think one method to fix that would be to assign a static height to this whole element, which would be this one right here. So let's try something like a minimum height of like 60. Does that work? Oh, that won't work. Minimum height of like 20 rem. Let's try that. Well, that's a bit high. Let's do like 15. See how that looks. And now when we click one of them, well, it still disappears. Okay, so it's because the Pokemon list 0 and 1 don't exist anymore. So this element doesn't even get rendered then. I think one solution for that would be to wrap this whole thing in a div and then assign the constant height to that div. So let's give it a class name of minimum height of, let's say, 15 rem. Let's have that so it will always take up space. I can assign a background to it just so you can see it better. So this div would be right here. We also want the content to be centered. So let's give it a flex item center. Now we have the content in the center, and whenever we click one of them, the height stays the same, which is exactly what we want. Great. Now, one thing I still do not like about this approach is that this middle thing also disappears. Actually, no, it's not a big deal. It would maybe look kind of weird if it didn't. So let's just leave it like that. Let's remove the background of red. And now whenever we click one of them, we get new Pokemon, but the height stays the same. So that is a way better user experience. And we can just, click through the Pokemon as often as we want. And we can go to the most handsome to see the list of the most handsome Pokemon. So the ones that get clicked the most. Now, what I find a bit surprising is that not all the Pokemon appear. So it seems like whenever we only clicked a Pokemon once, then it doesn't appear in this list right here. So let's see why that is the case. And to do that, we can go into our database, and here we do see all the Pokemon. Oh, and I know. Okay, so the reason for that is because we have defined something in our router. So whenever we get the most handsome, we have actually told Prisma to only take 5. And I don't think that's the way to go. So let's do like 20. And that will give us a way longer list. Yes, okay, so all these have like 1 vote, and then that's the top one, the bird. And it has, let's see, sorted by votes. The bird has 9 votes, Swablu, and that is why it's at the top. We can also show the votes at the most handsome. So if we want to show the votes, we can go to the Pokemon whenever we map them. And where do we want to show the votes? Let's do like below the Pokemon name. And also we want to capitalize first letter of string. Let's just make GitHub Copilot do that. So because we want the Pokemon names to be capitalized, right? So whenever we list the name, we can call the capitalize function on the name, and that will just capitalize the name. Looks a bit better. And now below the Pokemon name, we want the amount of votes to show up that this Pokemon has. So let's give it a flex and just leave it like that for now. So we have the H4. Oh, it should also be flex column. Then below the name, so we have the name. Now we want the votes below here. And for that, we could probably do just votes and then p.votes. See how that looks? Great. Okay, so now we also have the votes. It looks really bad. I might work a bit on improving the user interface because it does look really bad at the moment. Let's give it a class name of text extra small, text gray, like 500. See how that looks? Well, that's still, you know, it's fine for now, I guess. I wouldn't want it to stay that way forever, but also one change I'd like to make is have the image as the first thing to show up, and now that looks a bit better. And also let's list the Pokemon in the middle of the screen. So let's give the main div a max width of like 5XL. Do the margin on the x-axis to auto, so it will be centered. And it looks a bit weird because I'm zoomed in a lot, but once you zoom out, it looks a bit better. We can have the H1, give it a class name of like text 2XL, font bold, and text center, so it'll be in the center. We can assign the main div a padding, so everything looks a bit nicer, and also have these Pokemon in the middle of the screen. How would we do that? Actually, we can also have a grid. I think that would look good. So how about we list them side by side? I think that could look good. So in order to do that, we would have to have a grid somewhere. And let's try it here on this UL. Grid calls to. Okay, that looks good. Now we also want these to be in the center, so we can place items center. Let's see how that looks. Great. Now I think there's a lot of space between these Pokemon. So in the middle right here, let's see why that's the case. Because the grid is very wide. So let's give it a max width of like 1/3. Or actually, no, not a max width, a constant width of 1/3. And now these Pokemon are closer together. They're a bit close together, so let's do like 1/2. That looks better. And we also want the MX auto in this case. So they are in the middle. Nice. Very good. And now we can also have, let's do a space of Y. So just to space them out vertically a bit. And also have a bit of padding on the top and bottom. So padding of 6 at the top of the bottom. And that looks really good. Okay, so now we have the top Pokemon, the second one, third one, fourth one, and so on. Looks really good. Now I would like the these things to be centered. So I want all the images to be below one another. I think that looks a bit weird as is. Because, for example, this guy right here is very far, you know, like the name is larger, so it looks a bit off. And let's see how we would do that. So these are the LIs, but the LIs are not all the same size. So how about we do width full and assign it the background to just see better. Now that works. However, why is this one offset? I wonder. There's a little bit of space there that I don't know why. I think the space Y might be the problem. Yeah, okay, so the space Y was the problem. Let's remove all that again. Okay, so the space Y doesn't really know that the grid is breaking at this point, so it thinks this is just another LI down here, and so it also applies the space Y above the first element, which is not what we want. But this looks way better. All the images are on the left side now, like aligned under another. I think that looks great. So we can remove the background of red, and now we have the most handsome Pokemon, a list of the, how many? Like 15, or yeah, we have the 20 best looking Pokemon right here. Now I think one small change we want is to also have a link to the homepage below this H1. So let's have a link, import that from next link, and have it linked to the homepage. So back to voting, the link will have an href of /, so it goes back to the home page. Now that is very far to the left, so we can give it a text center, text extra small, underline, and that should look a bit better. Now it's still on the left side though. Why is it on the left side? Is it because of the margin? Nope. We can give this a flex and have the content just, justified to the center. Oh, it also needs to be a flex column and then item center because we're using a column. Okay, now it's in the center, looks a bit better. We can remove this and this, and we can give it a padding top of like 4. That looks a bit better. Okay. Now this is the page, very nice. We can go back to voting. This is the Pokemon Beauty Contest. Here we can choose the Pokemon. And then one last thing we would like to do is also have a link here that goes to the leaderboard. Okay, so let's work on that link. That is very easy to do. Where do we want it though? Let's have it below the voting options. So that would be at the bottom of the main. So right here we would have a link, and that link we still need to import from Next. We'll have an href of /most-handsome. Now one trick I like to use if you're working with complex projects is never hard coding the links, because you're probably going to be using them in a lot of places. If you're working with complex projects, then in that case you could have a shared or a like a constants file somewhere in your utils or wherever you want it, and then have a constant called, for example, export const leaderboard _nav, for example, is equal to, and then the current link you have, and we have double quotes here, we don't need those, and then import the leaderboard nav right here. And that way, whenever you change one thing right here, you don't have to go into your search and replace and search for like most handsome and then replace all occurrences. This one is way easier to maintain if you're working with a large project. We're not, but let's just leave it like that and have an A inside of the link. That A is gonna say see leaderboard. And that A is gonna be a text of extra small and underline. Let's see how that looks. Well, it's way down at the bottom. Let's see why it is down there. I'm not too sure. Looks a bit weird. It's kind of clipping outside of the screen. Let's see. See leaderboards. Okay, probably because we have the main as a flex 1. That means take up all the space. Let's remove that for a second. Oops, remove that for a second. And now, okay, now we have the C leaderboard right there. We do want a bit of padding on the top. So let's add a padding top of 12. And now, whenever you vote, you can vote. And you can also see the leaderboard. Now, because this project will be launched, like deployed to the internet, I don't think it makes sense to have all, like I think it was 500, we can remove this, all 500 Pokemon, for example. And why is this still throwing an error? Hold up. What did I do? Remove that. Okay, so right now we're fetching 2 Pokemon out of the possible, like what was it, 500 that there are on the Poke API where we're getting the Pokemon from. Now, because I would actually like some votes to occur and not just have like one vote on a lot of Pokemon, I think it will make it more interesting if we limit the Pokemon to the first, like, let's do 150 or let's do 100. And if there are a lot of people voting, Then we can increase it later, but let's leave it at 100 for now. Also change these, to 100. And now we will get the ID right here. So only the first 100 Pokemon. And I think that's going to be a bit more interesting in the leaderboard. As you can see, the leaderboards just changed. And now this project is pretty much done. So the next step would be to deploy this project. And in order for you to show the deployment steps like better, so you can follow along easier, I am going to show you the environment variable, which is a very sensitive thing. So you never want to do this if in a real production project, but I'm going to be changing the database password after this video. So I can show you how it looks like right now, and so you can follow along easier. So what we want to do is grab the environment variable we have as the database URL, and then we're going to deploy to vercel. So let's go here. I'm going to log in really quick, and there we go. I've logged in. Here you can see the AI project from a previous video, and we're going to add a new project and continue with GitHub. Now, before we deploy, let's actually push all these changes to GitHub and also run a lint to see if this project would actually build. So to scan your project for any error, you can use a command called lint. So it's called nextlint. You can have it in all NextJS projects. And if you're getting an error here, that also means that your project wouldn't build if you try to deploy it. So in this case, the most handsome, as you can see right here, is throwing an error in the 6th line at the 11th character. So in this case, it's complaining about an empty object, which is fine because this is a next page anyways, and pages can never receive props. So we can just remove that. We're not gonna worry about the TypeScript warnings for now. If this was a real production project, you would probably want to worry about those. But for this simple demo project, I'm just gonna run the lint again. And if all errors are gone, then that means we are ready to push up to GitHub, and all the errors are gone. Nice. So what we can do now is add everything to git commit with the message of improvements of second part, because this is the part 2. Commit that, and then git push that up to the repository. Now that we've pushed that up, we can reload the vercel page, continue with GitHub, and here we can see that this project didn't update yet. So let's try redoing that. Continue with GitHub. It still says 15 hours ago. So let's go to github.com and see why that is. Go to my repositories. And no, it says updated 26 seconds ago. So I think we are good to continue. Just import the project. And then here, for environment variables, we're going to copy the exact thing we have right here, which is database_URL. Paste that as the first environment variable. And then the value of that key, which is this string right here, we got from Planet Scale whenever we created the database. I'm gonna click add, and as you can see right here, it added this value, and now we can click deploy. By the way, if you've ever wondered what the deployment process looks like, you can also go to the building right here, and you can see live the building process. So this would essentially be the same as if you were running yarn or npm run build in your NextJS project. It's going to do the same thing as this guy is doing right here, including all the warnings that we've seen in the lint just a couple minutes ago. So if you were running yarn build, it would do the exact same thing as this one. You'd see the same stuff. And you can also verify that your build is valid using this technique. Now, the build was successful. So we did deploy this project to vercel. I'm gonna probably assign a custom domain to this, so it looks a bit more professional. Now we can continue to the dashboard and see this project in the browser. So most handsome Pokemon.vercel.app, it's loading, and here we have our Pokemon Beauty Contest. Now, we cannot vote. No, we can vote. It's just a bit slower. And when we go to the leaderboard, we see the most handsome Pokemon. Now, I'm gonna remove all the data from the database because this is just, data I made up personally, and post the link to this project below the video or in the description or both. I'm not sure yet. So whenever you're seeing this, you can also vote for your top most handsome Pokemon. And yeah, that is pretty much the deployment process. If you're interested, check out the website in the browser, vote for your favorite Pokemon, and just have fun, play around with the project a bit. The code is on GitHub. I linked the repo in the description, so you can see everything we did in the first part, and then improvements of the second part marked as such in the GitHub comments. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask them, play around with the project, and yeah, I really hope you enjoyed the video, have fun voting, and see you in the next one. Bye bye.